Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to T Minus Podcast. It's the first episode, and today we have Drew and Mikey from Legends of Venari. So, Drew is the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, and Mikey is the lead game designer. So, today we are gonna go through it, and we have a smoke wash. That's the first. So, why don't you guys introduce first a little bit yourself? Just what were you doing before and what have you working on?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Drew. My background is pretty mixed. I worked in real estate when I was younger. I worked in a Michelin star kitchen. More recently, I worked um, in neuroscience out of UCLA, and I've been in crypto for a bit. I've traded equities, and I got involved because I met Jason on a project we were both interested in, an NFT project, and he was starting to build this really cool and what I hadn't seen anybody do is kind of a heavy focus on the art first, and really thinking through things and wanting to build a product before we sort of launch any kind of economy. And this was back in August, September, and I absolutely thought it was one of the cooler things that I'd seen in terms of the blockchain gaming space. So when he invited me to come help out, I absolutely jumped in, and I kind of ended up taking on some roles that are a bit different than my background, but it's been an amazing ride. So I'm happy to be here.
Cool. What about you, Mike?
For me, hi guys, I'm Mickey. Uh, Before LOV, I was just a aspiring dental school student, so just waiting on the semester to start, but I ended up rescinding my application. Before that, I worked with the CM team at My.com Games, worked for a few playtests at studios such as Riot Games and stuff like that, and just always been an avid gamer. I met Lino Pix actually through League of Legends, where he had me actually work on some stuff that was meant for anti-botting, because that's a heavy problem in the NFT space, NFT gaming space. And even though originally while it was meant for that purpose, I had a lot of cool ideas for the game. So I heard about the project and a lot about what we could go and where we could do, like what we could do with the project in terms of gameplay, in terms of vision and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm pretty happy where we're heading now and where we will be in the future.
That's very cool. You mentioned just now that you started mainly to kind of solve or think about the botting problem. Is there a real solution around it? Like, can it be stopped?
Yeah, with gameplay and a lot of design choices, we can actually help prevent a lot of the botting issues, where a bot can only do certain actions that they're known about, but we want to have a lot of decisions be on the player perspective and basically have the players create their own edge against the bot, and the bot just becomes simply just too inefficient to try and compete against real players.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I see, especially with the decision you took of changing every time the combo, especially for the rarest Venari. It seems very interesting the way you kind of attacked that kind of issue. Did you take any inspiration from other games where you were building Venaries?
Yeah, we had quite a lot of different inspirations for where the game could go and what we wanted sort of the vibe of the game to be. And a lot of inspiration either came from things like the environment of Breath of the Wild, gameplay of simple creature capture games like obviously Pokemon Go and stuff like that. But then we also wanted to really dive into this immersive world experience where players could create a community in and out of the game and create these memories through our gameplay, right? So we really wanted to strike on some really meaningful core values. touch upon that.
Yeah, it was very. I mean, honestly, like we love Venaries. I believe I was the first one to catch first tier 3, like in the very recent,
Wait,
was it
really?
2 days after? I
No
think so.
way. Which one was it? That's amazing.
I have the Algala. So I thought,
Nice.
yeah, I think it was Christmas Day or the day after Christmas. So, but I mean, the kind of art you go around it, it's very, very cool. So a reason why we went very heavily on Venom is like the art is beautiful, like compared to any other crypto game, if you can define it like that. There was a real game out of it, you know. Do you think, Drew? Do you think is like what's the best way to keep the community engaged all over this period? Because
yeah, I think
we
this is a great
we see a
question.
lot of
yeah.
yeah.
I just I think I just want to touch on the art because I think that's a very important aspect of Legends of Venari and its genesis. And you know, Jason was working on the art for 4 months before they even started development on the game, or even launched the pass. And he found some absolutely amazing artists, and I really think that it's one of our strong suits is we're going to make fantastic IP, you know, and they do such a good job. Like they think about all the details, and when you see the renders, I think I have something that I'll drop on Twitter for the new season. They're just absolutely beautiful, and so I think like it's really one of the ways that we can differentiate ourselves out in the space, even though the game is, you know, at this point it's idle in terms of gameplay. I think the art's absolutely captivating, and if I think this is right, but the original idea was around catchable art, which, you know, is something that really I think lends itself well to the NFT space. But that being said, like engagement is like something that's definitely difficult. I think like two things is one, because we didn't start with direct earning, you know, like we didn't start with a token first. So demand generation had to come from, you know, players playing the game and vibing with the vision and wanting to be a part of something that's a live product. So, you know, there's going to be bugs, there's going to be hiccups, there's going to be new features that get rolled out. But from, you know, the player side, I think it's a really cool experience to be able to feel like you're contributing to something. And, you know, so that I would say like this project isn't for everybody because it's not complete yet. Like you can't just come in and play, you know, the full, you know, Legends of Venari product, you know, and the vision that we're trying to achieve here. It's going to take time. But I think, you know, being a part of that experience is really cool from a player's point of view, and it's very Web3. Um, and yeah, so we definitely ran into some engagement problems throughout alpha season because we had initially planned for it to be roughly like half the time of what it was, and you know, due to some circumstances like the war in Ukraine, we had quite a bit of time that we spent fundraising, and additionally we kind of took, you know, a bit of the way through alpha season, we took some steps back and really thought about where we wanted to take Legends of Venari. So we kind of lost a little bit of focus on content because new Venari is kind of the way that people stay engaged. What's the next thing to catch? What am I going to add to my collection? And so when you don't have that, with the game product being where it is, it's a little difficult to keep people, you know, kind of excited. So that's obviously going to change at the beginning of beta season, which there's going to be a ton of brand new Venari. There's cool new environments. I'm just going to drop a sneak peek here on Twitter that you guys can all check out. It's absolutely beautiful. And that's kind of how I'd summarize it. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Mickey?
Not really. You nailed pretty much most of the major points. I would say the only other thing is just like when we started the project, we were like really invested into gameplays and player experience first, where we want to make sure that players understand like what we're trying to do and where we're going to go with the project. Mostly because we wanted to like really convey to them that their experience matters a lot to us, right? From the environment, the art, the audio, even all of that needs to be put together for the players to enjoy the experience of playing the game before we move on to other things like such as earning and other things like that.
Yeah, a cool thing of Legends of Venari that I would say that at the beginning, a lot of people were kind of complain or just vocal about it is you didn't have a token and you still have not releasing a token yet. What, let's say, can you walk me through the idea of why you waited, which I agree with you, by the way, why you wait until later in the development to release a token and what the token should do?
Yeah, I can touch on the beginning of that, and I'll let Mickey kind of
Mm-hmm.
take the rest on that. It is, it's like we said, we saw at that time a lot of people were launching, sort of the economic side of things first, and then building a product around it. And while that's great for fundraising, we wanted to take a different approach where we built the something to do an actual product first, and then kind of layer in Web3 as it made sense. Because the thing about blockchain is, it's great to add it in, but once you put it in, you can't take it away. So for us, and particularly Jason, who's been in the space for a while, he's he's a smart contract OG. He won ETH Denver. The ETH Denver hackathon. He's won ETH Waterloo. He's been in the space for quite a while. Like he really knows what he's doing. So he's very cautious about very cautious and thoughtful about how we're going to go about and implement those things within the game. So part of that is building out the product and seeing how players act within our ecosystem before we decide to add that layer of blockchain into it.
Yeah, the other thing is also just simply like we want to make sure the game state in terms of the economy, the player experience, the generation will match up with all of our analytic and modeled out player demands before we feel prepared and ready to deliver a token for players to utilize for gameplay. Because that's what we believe the token should ultimately serve, is to enhance and augment gameplay for users. So with our marketplace being rolled out soon, we want to first allow players to be able to engage in that organic community that will come purely just from gameplay, right? The marketplace is where players will be able to trade Venari, trade their essence that they will use for many different things in the game. And you can even almost think of essence like a token, but since it exists within our game ecosystem for now, before going on chain, it's very different from the traditional notion of a token, right? We want these things to have value in the game, have meanings to players, and are utilized by players for their day-to-day activities. And because of that envisionment of what we want the token to do, that's one of the reasons why we've held off so long for releasing a token. I would say the other major reason is simply because we don't want players to come into the game and purely just farm or grind out the game, burn themselves out just for the sake of earning that token, right? We want players to enjoy the experience, to realize that they can have a lot of fun and really enjoy the experience of Legends of Venari before having to worry themselves about oh, what's my rate of, what's my return on investment, what's my daily earnings, stuff like that, right? We want to have them first focus on the gameplay first before moving on to other things like that.
And
Yeah,
I just pinned that sneak peek of one of our new environments with the volcano in the background. That looks absolutely amazing, in my opinion.
is that the new island?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Do you want to touch on any of that, Mickey?
Heleno?
New region?
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
the simple new region for players to go and just explore. I don't want to give away too much since, it's the exploration, right?
For sure.
Yeah, and, I want to touch maybe a bit more on the token side. Is your idea to have one token or two tokens, and how do you see like all the games need a token in Web3, or is not a real requirement?
Yeah, so I think the idea for us is we would like to tokenize Essence. And I think the big differentiator is we really see Web3 as a tool rather than the selling point of the game. So we want to make sure we're really thoughtful and make sure the feedback loops really make sense in terms of what happens when Essence becomes a token. Because once it's tokenized, you're basically introducing it outside, both inside and outside your ecosystem. So it's something we want to be very careful about. In regards to a DAO token, that's definitely something we have in kind of the works, but that's not really going to come into play until late game is fleshed out. And is we want to make sure that the product is in a great place before we sort of commit to how the DAO token is going to look. That being said, it is coming, but that's basically the kind of high level of it. I think in terms of like the more general question, I think it's still an experiment. Games can have tokens, games cannot have tokens. A lot of people are using what Axie went through as kind of the example for why games shouldn't have tokens, but I think it remains to be seen whether or not it can be effective or not. So I don't really have like a yes no answer there. I think for us, we want to be a Web3 game, so we want to have elements of the gameplay that are Web3 implementations. So for us, it makes sense. We're just being very, very careful about how we do it.
Yeah, we have seen with many different so-called play-to-earn games that they kind of burn out before their product is actually out. So yeah, the experiment of having a token or not having a token is still to be seen, especially in different kind of gameplays. Like I can see in, for example, role-play game having a token, but in a game, let's say like Fortnite, or in a game like League of Legends, do you really need a token, or is there something around it that can be done?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question for sure.
What's your thought about it? It's like if for example you have a Fortnite, what would be the approach in your opinion, like to have Web3 economy in a sort of way in the game?
I think Mickey can answer maybe that a little better than I, but I'll just lead with that. In terms of the stigma that Web2 gamers have around games, it's not very positive. And I just think that if you're, in a game like Fortnite, if you were to add any Web3 implementations, it just wouldn't do well because, players aren't interested in that yet. So, yeah, in terms of like a more robust, game design perspective, I think Mickey would have a much better answer.
I've answered this question before in terms of adding like tokens to like very traditional Web2 gaming. While it can be done, most of the purpose of a token and stuff like that is for players to be able to trade and like basically serve as a currency between players, almost like a marketplace, right? One of the best examples I can pull up for you is, say, the CSGO skin market, right, on Steam Marketplace. Those skins have gone up tremendously in value from their initial launch, and players still actively freely trade between them, either for collectors, for use purpose, what have you. But to them, like, getting the really low float values is really valuable, right? Getting those really clean skin patterns, getting the stickers on those skins are really valuable assets to them. And you can almost similarly think of that. So what if there was a token behind that, right? What if the value of, say, the Op Dragon lore had a token tied to it? And that would greatly change either the player's perceived value or the fact that the players now can directly turn these not just into like real money, but into this tokenized value. But behind it is basically still the weight of the value of the item itself to the players. So you really have to consider what you're tokenizing and what is tied to that token for these traditional Web 2 games for it to make sense to players, as well as basically convince players to use the token and utilize that value over fiat currency, right?
Yeah.
In that
Yeah.
situation, you would either have to either close the loop and only allow the token to be traded, which now instead of having a direct fiat comparison, you only have now speculative value, which obviously is the nature of the token, right? That's where we step into a little bit more of the dangerous area, where a lot of, like Drew said, Web 2 is a little bit more hesitant and more unfamiliar with tokenization. But because if you can guarantee the value of, say, that skin, that item, whatever, then it will naturally should generate value for you, for the players to want to utilize that token and basically help protect the value of that item and the token as well. The one major issue that you might have with this is obviously just because most people in Web2 simply rather just use fiat, right? To them, it's way more convenient. They don't have to go through like two hoops to be able to like convert to a token and then utilize that token and then figure out what they want to do with the rest of the tokens, right? And if they want to cash out, it's also the same thing, right? So it's just a little bit of additional hurdle for Web2 gamers to sort of get over and understand what the purpose and utilization of a token is in a game before it becomes more before it becomes more mainstream, in my opinion.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, I agree. It's still very complicated for normal people to do anything crypto. So for sure, gaming is a sort of next step to a lot of people. Do you think, let's say, how are you looking for traditional gamers to come to Legends of Venari like in the near future, or you're just aiming to get the Web3 crypto community at the moment?
We want
Yeah.
our goal was to really have like all gamers, right? No matter what background. Web 2 traditionally, Web 3 curious, Web 3 invested, right?
Yeah,
All sorts of
exactly.
gamers, because we want to really hit that broad audience, because it's why we went with such a simple theme as a creature capture, right? It's a very iconic IP. It's very, very like nostalgic for a lot of players. Everyone can easily identify and recognize with the game, and that is one of the values that we wanted to start off with, to let players be able to quickly sort of attach to the game, right? They can immediately tie values to the game, what they like, what they don't like, but because of those really easy sort of pulls and hooks, that's how we really wanted to introduce players to this game as like a platform for even those not in Web3, right? It's why one of the reasons why we didn't go token first. Right now, Web2 gamers can come in and it just seems like another Web2 game to them, right?
Yeah, and there is plans down the line to have early game that's essentially free to play. We're thinking about a referral mechanism, so there'd be like kind of an access code, so it'd still be a bit exclusive at first. This would be post beta season, right, when we're going into a full launch. Um, but the idea would be that anything that's of tangible value would be gated behind the NFT. So you could come in and maybe catch your first Venari, but if you wanted to do anything meaningful or something that had real money value, you'd have to have the NFT. And I think in a more broader sense, I believe that gaming will be one of the vehicles that takes blockchain mainstream, and it's familiar, and it's a really if we can nail the use cases, it's really powerful. And I do think folks would be a lot more interested than that than engaging with some sort of complicated DeFi protocol. So, I mean, I think the future for blockchain, it'll become more of a tool, and, it'll be kind of obfuscated in products, and, we might get to the point where people don't even realize they're using blockchain. But for us, it's still quite new, and there still is a massive hurdle of stigma around, how people who are outside of the space, view Web3 and NFTs in general. But I do think that if we do a really great job of building a really simple product that's fun to play and looks really amazing, I think that, yeah, there are a lot of people that would be very interested in playing, and it definitely is our goal to eventually go after, Web 2 conversion, are people who are kind of on the periphery, maybe Web 3 curious. Maybe they bought Dogecoin, but they don't interact with the space too much, right? And in terms of like phasing, the way that we see it is sort of phase one was the alpha season, and that was, could we build a minimum viable product? This next phase is about really building out a complete game, and to do that, we're sort of capturing folks, or going after folks who are in the Web3 space, who want to come in and maybe play a product that's in development and have a chance to have their voice heard, as our project gets developed. But once we feel like the game is a bit more complete, feels polished, and easy to play for somebody who doesn't have, a MetaMask or any type of crypto wallet, that's when we'll really kind of like kick up, sort of going after broader audiences.
Yeah, everything makes a lot of sense right now. No, game seems to be the next kind of big application for crypto adoption. At least that's what a lot of people are saying. Do you think like the way you structure Legends of Venari was like you buy the NFT and it's kind of a ticket to the game? Do you see this is a more broader question, but do you think we will have free to play Web3 games that can kind of have let's say you can generate some real value in the game or have some real adoption?
I think it's tricky. Maybe Mickey, you want to hop on that one, but I think that's a tricky question.
Yeah, like you were saying the thing about that one again. Can you like try to word it a different way? I'm trying to like wrap my head around it.
I think it's difficult if it's free to play because of the botting factor. If you don't have a way to kind of gate the game, it becomes much easier to bot. And then, I think free to play is great because it's great for, user acquisition, and onboarding. But, to us, part of the past was, I wouldn't say crowdfunding, but more crowdsourcing is, having people come in and be early and have an opportunity to catch early LOV assets before anybody else does, and that's part of kind of, I wouldn't say a gift, but it's part of the reward of coming in and supporting us early is if you were in the alpha season, you caught Genesis creatures, which people most likely will not be able to catch ever again. And, additionally, with the way that, Venari repopulation is going to work, it's going to be dynamic and eventually based on the number of users in the ecosystem. So as the player base scales up, there's just going to be less of the rarer stuff to catch, relative to the early stuff. So, people are not going to be able to catch the Genesis Venari, some of the beta season Venari. And I think that's more how we would view, this sort of speculative play on Legends of Venari rather than, a yield farming loop.
Yeah, that's for sure. I love my serialized Venaries. That's for sure.
And that's like exactly what I think they're trying to cultivate is like, it's not just a digital asset. It's like, it's something you can bond with your little buddies, right? Like you caught your favorite ones and you don't necessarily want to give those away or sell them, right?
Yeah, that's also, I would say, why NFT in general had, well, they've been volatile, but they have been volatile in a different way because you kind of bond with your NFT in the sense that you kind of it represents yourself. It gives you a sort of experience that a token doesn't give you. You were touching before on having different communities on and kind of interoperability between different kind of communities. Can
Yeah,
you touch a bit
definitely.
more on that?
Yeah, I'll kind of touch on the partnership side, and then let Mickey kind of take over on the design side because he's obviously the mastermind behind that. We think we like the ideas of interoperability, but we think that they're kind of a ways off in terms of practical applications. So to us, it made a lot more sense to do a much more thoughtful and kind of baby stepped approach. So, for example, we're working with biopills, and I think people have seen the leaked models of the biopills Venari, which will be called Zord, and that's like a really cool way that we can get folks from their ecosystem involved in our game, and then vice versa. Once you'll be able to mint those, you could potentially take that Venari back into the bioverse, and we talked with the founder of biopills, and he shot out this idea of potentially having like a Venari themed sector of bioverse, which would be really cool. I always thought the idea of going and catching this cool creature in LOB and then having it cruise around with you as you play some FPS would just be that. I would love to do that. Like I want to go just wreck people with my my legendary Folacree or my legendary Jinhu. That just seems like awesome. So for us, these partnerships we think through very very we're very thoughtful about it, and because I think in terms of interoperability, composability, having assets that can be taken across multiple games, the tech is well, maybe not the tech, but the practicality of it, I think, is still quite a bit a ways in front of us rather than here right now. So the way that we're kind of doing it is this baby stepped approach through partnerships. And I'll let kind of Mickey talk about the design and how he thought through that and etc.
Yeah, like a lot of our design for the gameplay is really to space things out for players, right? You can simply grind through a lot of these like other games where you just blast through a bunch of time, a lot of investment, and really just simply just get through the game, right? You wanted to slow that pacing down naturally to a point where players can feel like they are progressing stepwise, right? For many of you guys, it's like, oh my god, I hit account level XYZ, and then my energy is now gone up, and it feels really rewarding for you guys, right? To be able to claim that new additional energy and use that in the gameplay. There are also the landmarks of, oh my god, I finally made it to Lyra. I finally reached the point where I can buy these T2 baits, improve my rigs, and just basically feel that progression as you play through the game. Obviously, we talked about the issue where alpha season lasted a little bit longer than we wanted to and we originally planned for. So that's why towards the end of the season, we had a lot of content be delayed back and pushed back from beta, such as things like the grid and other things, these major rehauls that we wanted to introduce as huge gameplay elements that we couldn't really do without deploying the seasonal reset, right? And for players, we've realized that there are a lot of things that we may have designed or we may have built out that may not line up with what players have wanted. And that's why during beta season, a lot of our changes and a lot of our progression methods are actually now geared a little bit towards a lot of player feedback and what we learned from the alpha season, right? So just to say, like a little bit of a leak before the patch notes go out, and a little bit today or tomorrow, there's actually quite a lot of changes in terms of like progression in terms of energy and how a lot of those things will work, where players will basically have to re-go through the leveling process, but it's a quite different leveling process from what they're used to before. And we've adjusted the curves a little bit, adjusted how and where where players should hit those progression points to once again re-engage in that meaningful, stepwise experience through the gameplay.
Yeah, we are all waiting for the next season. And actually, another thing you just mentioned, the grid system, which seems to be the next iteration of Venaries. How will the grid system looks like, and kind of what the experience that's going to be there?
So we talked about this in another conversation before. The grid won't deploy immediately with the beta. We want to first allow players to start going through that new player experience before we drop the whole grid on them, right? Because that's quite a huge gameplay change. But the grid will also come in parts, in different phases, where we set up the first grid. We allow players to get a feeling of the grid before we start adding the complicated systems that we have prepared on top of it. Where this grid is basically going to be a living, breathing experience for players, right? It's something they interact with. It's something that interacts with them back, right? And because of this huge gameplay change, we had to change quite a lot of systems behind the scenes from alpha to beta, which is again one of the reasons why we had to take this brief break. We had to take this season reset to help prepare and update these systems to be modernized for a lot of the development that we have planned through the beta season, and the grid being just the first of many, right? There are many other systems coming that are, I wouldn't say as big as the grid, but quite significant that it's a whole other gameplay things for players to do.
Are we gonna have some sort of PvP interaction in the beginning of the new season, or that's something we look furthermore?
Probably further down the line.
Yeah.
Because the
Okay.
grid, one of the phases of the grid is player interactivity. You guys can expect some sort of competition between players around that.
Fantastic. Another thing that was quite different from a lot of other games is guilds could actually build create real value for the members in it, because you get some advantage being in a group in general more than the other, because you get additional information. How do you see these things evolving in Venaries?
So, like I really also talked about before, Legends of Venari is primarily right now an information game where players are contesting over information and basically trying to be the first in many things to get that information, where knowledge is basically the power behind a lot of it, right? So, while we do promote guilds and gameplays and to have cooperative efforts, we also at the same time want to make sure that the individual has a quite fair chance against others and being able to play at the equal level, right? One of the ways that we're doing that is through actually the grid system, where the grid is basically going to allow players to take control of certain control points potentially, and that'll offer either conditional other benefits to the people in their group, their friends, what have you. But then others may be just solo, where it might not provide as much of a benefit or not nearly enough to compete against the larger control points, right? So there'd be different varying degrees of how powerful those control points are, but through that we want players to basically be able to say, hey, I have my stake in here in this grid, and while it may not be comparable to others, it's still mine. I still can reap the benefits of it. In terms of the information game, a lot of things are changing behind the scenes where not all information might be shareable in the future, especially certain locations and how Venari will interact with the grid. But we'll probably have more details on that once the grid begins to roll out.
That's cool.
The grid, we're all excited for the grid.
Yeah, I see. If anyone, by the way, if anyone has a question, feel free to request. We can bring you up. I want to know though, what's your favorite Venari? Do you have a favorite one?
I'm probably biased here, but I like the cat the cat jellyfish or the catapus.
I wonder why.
So the story is like part of we like the idea of driving things to our community. So if you're a Vicari member, we've had opportunities for folks to vote on helping us pick what Venari are going to go into the game next. And so back during the alpha season, we brainstormed a bunch of ideas. Bear, I believe the bear is what was chosen, and that was the first kind of player chosen Venari that's going into the game, and you'll see it in beta season, I believe. But one of the choices that came out of the community was the jellyfish, and I really wanted it, and I think the whole animation team may not have liked that, but somehow we got this because it's really difficult to rig. So we got this kind of fun little octopus cat, which I like because it's not really fully based on anything real. I've never seen anything like that in nature, so I like that it's like uniquely Caerras. And Mickey picked a pretty hilarious name, so I'll go with that one. Not biased. I think I know which one. I know what Mickey's
What's yours?
is.
Oh, really? You think it? All right, I want to hear what you guess first.
You want to hear what I guess?
Yeah.
It's got to be Tyrio, right?
No. Tyrio's the faction favorite.
Okay,
Although I don't
no
know.
clue. Okay,
I
I
think
thought it was
I think
Tyrio.
Azul players might be torn between Torrio and Waddell now.
Oh yeah,
Waddle.
Waddle is super cute.
Yeah, these are the new from the new Venaries, right?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
For me, like really early on, I really liked Horus. I really liked the Horus.
Oh yeah, Horus is really cool.
It was my company profile picture for a while.
The Isoharis is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I didn't receive a lot of love, but it's one of my favorites too.
Which one is that?
Like my favorite is the Algala, but
The Agala.
I like the
Which element?
The ice one.
Nice.
Yeah, and it might be because it's the number one, but yeah. But
You got
also,
the number one serialized on it, right? Do you have that? Did you tweet that out? I'd love to pin it to the space.
a long time ago. I can
You
find it out.
you gotta search through the depths like Gandalf to find it.
Yeah, I can look for it. Yeah, but also the Aras is pretty cool. So it's a hard choice. It's like, what's your favorite child? That's probably
I mean, if I
the
said
question
Laticus, I
there.
think everyone in the space will be up in arms.
Let's be real. It's Laticus. That was gonna be my other guess, but I didn't want to blow you up.
I have a last question for you. Do you think there is a way to create value around the game? So I've been listening to a few podcasts, and there is this new concept which is called GameFi, which is not creating the value inside the game, but instead around it. So the same way like football doesn't create any value, but it's like the people that go to see the football, players and the sponsorship and so on. What's your idea around it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is something we think about quite a bit, and it's a bit on the back burner because we're still trying to finish the product, obviously. But IP expansion is one of the things we want to do really well, and I think that we have really great IP. It's unique. even though there's the Pokemon reference, our gameplay isn't going to be too similar to Pokemon. I think really it's the superficial connection of a creature collecting game or creature collection game. But if you know the Venari ecosystem and you see a Venari creature, it's a Venari. They have this low poly feel. It's sort of these cyberpunk mythical creatures with glowing eyes. And I think that our artists have done a really amazing job building that.
Yeah.
And additionally, that Mickey's been working super hard, and Jason, on the new narrative that we haven't really talked about too much publicly, but there's a lot of new stuff coming, and that's something we definitely want to build on in really interesting ways. So whether that takes the form of a comic or some sort of web series where we have folks reading out the lore, there's definitely interesting things that we want to do, where we're kind of pushing the bounds of how people generate content around games. But that's definitely more long term and highly important to us. But is there anything you can share about the narrative? I don't think we've really said too much. Okay.
Not yet.
Fair enough. I don't want to get anybody in trouble here.
Yeah, no worries. I was just saying, a lot of it does line up with the rebranding. So if you always haven't noticed, Legends of Venari is repping some new branding, new icons, new emblems. And don't worry, it is a subtle nod to a lot of the narrative that's being written and planned out for the game.
Perfect. Well, I guess everything we have discussed was very, very insightful for everyone.
And we just found your tweet of the ISO Gala, and I just pinned it to the top of to the space chat. Yeah.
I also
how
got the link.
Excited were you when you caught that? Because that was, early on we had a bit of content creation, and seeing those reaction videos that people made early on, I think you two actually have one when you were trying to catch a golden filigree. But those were so amazing for us to see, because it really made us realize that, hey, we have something special here. People feel like connected to these things when they actually catch the really rare stuff, which is so cool to see, because at that time, I don't know how many other blockchain games didn't have direct earning, and to see people get that excited about catching a Venari was just so cool. And for us, it was like, okay, there's something really sticky here.
Yeah, I mean, that was when I found the first tier 3. I wasn't sure it was a tier 3, because back then it was the purple was not really purple, so it was when I saw it's is that a tier 2 or is it a tier 3? So I wasn't sure about that. So what's going on? And I tried reactions. Both reactions were wrong. and I still caught it. So that was crazy.
Amazing.
Yeah. But when we found the golden filigree, Tiffany was playing on it, and she was kind of almost sure that she was gonna lose it, because all the time she get tier 3s and they run away, and she gets super pissed. Literally, she gets super pissed for hours because she loses the tier 3s. But yeah, no, that was crazy. It's really it's really an experience. That is what a game should do. So it's not just farming a token, whatever. It's just creating an experience. That's why people play games, and it doesn't have to feel like a job. Otherwise, that's not a game, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah. I think we should wrap it up. Well, thank you very, very much for everyone that's joined. We had some technical difficulties, but hopefully next one we're gonna have it on Twitch. But yeah, thank you, Mickey and Drew, for
no worries,
for the space.
Definitely, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Cool. Talk to you soon.
Thank
All
you.
right, bye now.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks everyone for coming, listening in.